So, welcome to the Plus One podcast, and today is the first episode, and I'm thrilled to welcome a lady, Jennifer Lynch, who I got to know over the last couple of years and has actually been the inspiration for this podcast. She's going to talk about some of her work today, and particularly the area of universal design for learning, UDL, and that's where the name for the podcast came. So UDL incorporates this idea of plus one, and Jen is going to perhaps tell us about that and some other aspects of UDL today. So welcome, Jen. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Hi, Joe. How are you?
Super. I'm good.
Very honoured. I don't know how to follow that.
Well, I mean, I thought you had to be the first person on the podcast because as I say, you brought me into UDL, and it's where the podcast has come from. So
yeah, you're another one of my disciples that I've brought along.
Absolutely, that's it. Yeah. So, I mean, cue everybody up to just tell us who's Jen Lynch, and kind of what's your journey into education, I suppose, and into this whole area.
Yeah, so I suppose I returned to education as a mature student, actually, and I always wanted to do a degree. So, like, my background is as a dental nurse. So I was a dental nurse for a long time, but I always had this, I suppose, grow inside me that I really wanted to do a degree. And to be honest with you, I never felt clever enough or academic enough to do a degree the first time round. And then when I was in my 30s, I decided to go back to education. So I did a degree in English and history, and I did an access course first of all. And as soon as I did the access course, I thought, oh, this is me. This is me. I found my tribe, and I just wanted to teach adults. So I did my degree, and then I did my HDip. When I left university first, I suppose I thought I kind of wanted to get away from dental nursing altogether. But the funny thing was, like, I suppose life has a way of kind of bringing you back to things. And I came across an advertisement as a dental nursing teacher. So I thought, oh, okay. So I'm working in Marino College of Further Education. So I've been working there for the past 5 years. So it's kind of been really great. But before I started in Marino College, I worked in the disability sector as well. So I worked in the National Learning Network. So I was like career guidance there, and I also worked as a support teacher. So that was a huge kind of, I suppose, inspiration for me at the start of my career. It was a great kind of learning for me. It really taught me, I'm so grateful for being in the disability sector and, seeing the innovation behind the disability sector. It's definitely a different pace to what I'm doing at the moment, either, in the further education sector. But definitely when I see the way teachers teach in the disability sector, and I suppose, that's the whole thing with the UDL. That's what kind of encouraged me to start looking at the UDL. It was, how do you bring everybody through, a program all together, people with different needs. So to start having that, I suppose, having that educational journey at the very beginning of my career has been quite, I suppose, it's kind of setting me up to be the teacher that I've turned out to be, I suppose.
Yeah, and that's quite a teacher. I mean, last year you won the John Kelly Award for Universal Design for Learning. Tell us a little bit about that, and what is Universal Design for Learning to start with, and then what's all this award? How did that come about?
Well, if I'm being perfectly honest with you, I kind of found UDL by mistake. I thought I was signing up for a different course, and I signed up for UDL. So to be honest, I had no idea about UDL. And when I signed up for the course, when I was accepted onto it, I thought, oh God, I better go and find out about this course. But as soon as I read about UDL, my mind was blown. I thought, this is just absolutely amazing. So UDL, as you know, Joe, because you're one of my disciples, Universal Design for Learning, it's how you, I suppose it's how the brain works, and how everybody's brain is different, and how we all learn differently. So I think that's really important for us as teachers and lecturers to understand that everybody learns differently. So it's really about offering students choice. And if you think about when you're, I suppose, designing a building, you don't just design a building with steps up to it. You know, if you look at, you know, universal design, you're going to design a building with a ramp up to it as well. And what that does is that's like, it's part of an inclusion process. So that will help not only people with, you know, a disability, but also like the elderly, or, you know, a person with a pram. So that's the whole premise really around universal design for learning. It's that, you know, it's like designing a curriculum for everybody, and to offer people choice in the curriculum as well. So I actually was really intrigued by it. And in fairness, I think a lot of people kind of do UDL without thinking about it or realizing there's a framework about it. Yeah. So that's why I thought, when I did the course, and I did win the John Kelly Award, and the reason, I suppose, that one of the reasons I won it is that I kind of combined my journey with another education, which was actually the National Learning Network. So I overlapped a module that I was teaching with a module in the National Learning Network, and I kind of wanted to bring all the students kind of through with the help of the other tutor that was involved as well. So it was a really kind of, I suppose, exciting and innovative process that we kind of went through together. So
what's the so tell us about the course before UDL. So what were you teaching, and who were you teaching it to? You know, tell us who the students were, and then tell us what, when you applied UDL, what did you do differently or make changes?
Yeah, so I suppose what I applied it to, so the courses that I do in the further education, so we do like level 4, level 5 and level 6 courses. And I suppose, you know, you're kind of doing a level 6 course, and for a couple of years, I was kind of frustrated by maybe people going from a level 5 to a level 6 and kind of thinking.
And for people who don't know what level 4, 5, 6 are, I mean,
so it's on the QQI framework. So level 4 would be like a return to learning. So it's kind of like, I suppose, maybe the junior cert. Level 5 is like the equivalent of the leaving cert, and then level 6, it's a higher award. So it's the QQI framework.
Okay, so this is kind of towards the end of school and the beginning of college. It's that kind of it for people who aren't in Ireland, for instance, who are trying to place these things. Yeah, exactly.
So okay. I mean, like, you know, when people finish their leaving cert, they can choose to apply to the CAO, which we have. I think in this country we have a bit of an obsession of applying to the CAO and getting into university. Or the other alternative is to do a course in a PLC course. So I suppose what I found was our students were very diverse. So we have students that maybe didn't get enough points to get into university. So they have chosen to come back and do a PLC course. And that's kind of like, that will bring them into university the following year, you know. There's a progression route there. Or we had students coming back to education after, a long time away from education. So you might have young mothers with kids that will decide, you know what, it's my time now, I want to go back to education. And then you have a lot of, foreign national students that are coming in and they want to get themselves an education, but English isn't their first language. So if you have, you know, all those different cohorts in your class, how can you bring them all through successfully? And that's where universal design for learning comes in.
Right. So you're not talking about just disabled people. You're talking, I mean, whatever disability means, you're talking about quite a wide spectrum of what, mostly adult or all adult learners.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say universal design for learning enables people. It's not just for people that are disabled, but we all have some form of disability. Every one of us have
Yeah.
some form of disability. I mean, I wouldn't be fantastic at maths. So I would say that gives me trouble, in my life, that I can't work out a percentage off the top of my head. That was something that I struggled with in school. Maths wouldn't be. So we all have, and I'm not trying to poo-poo this, but
No.
we all have challenges,
Mm.
So whether it's that person who has 2 or 3 kids, and they're returning to education, and that's a challenge, for them, that they're coming back to education. Somebody that English isn't their first language, somebody that has dyslexia, somebody that has dyspraxia. So how do you offer them a level playing field and bring people through at the same time? So
But I
you're
mean,
not looking.
do educators not do that anyway? I mean, is this not built into modern education anyway, that we give everybody a level playing field, or is it something that we still need to do work on?
I think the curriculum is built around this idea of an average student. I think that module descriptors that we get and we use, it's this idea that people are at a certain level, and this is why they call it level 4, level 5, or level 6, and you're supposed to be at that level. But what happens if you're not at that level? How and who are you to say that I'm not at that level, or who am I to say somebody else is not at that level? So again, it's about kind of offering choice to people. And in an ideal world, we'll all sit in a classroom and we'll all be academically the same, but that doesn't happen. Some people, some people would struggle more academically with some subjects and not other subjects. Some people would struggle with writing English. And I mean, I'm sure yourself, Joe, if you sit down to a computer and you're told to write a 2,500 word essay, it takes people a long time to get their head around writing a 2,500 essay.
Yeah.
So why not offer someone the choice? So instead of focus on the written word, why not focus on a little bit of creativity? So offer the students choice of doing something alternative to that.
So what might be an example of I mean, what's an alternative to writing the essay? Because I mean, that's a standard ask these days, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's the thing. But I suppose an example for that would be the project that I did for the John Kelly Award. So on the module descriptor, it was 2,500 word essay. And I thought, some of the students, as I said, English wasn't their first language. I had 2 students in my class with dyslexia, that they'd always struggled. And I had a couple of different kind of challenges in the class. So I thought, how can I ask them to do something differently? So what I asked them to do was, I gave them the option of doing the 2,500 word essay, or they can choose to present their work as a PowerPoint. And they could talk over the PowerPoint as they were presenting it. Obviously, you have to give them different criteria. So they had to talk for 10 minutes and they had to have 10 slides. That's the equivalent of 2,000 to 3,000 words. So what's the difference between somebody writing it and somebody orally expressing themselves? And sometimes people can orally express themselves a lot, better than what they can, particularly if English isn't their first language, or someone that has dyslexia. So I kind of feel like sometimes offering students choice gives them that freedom, not focusing on word count makes students actually give you more words,
Yeah. And I mean, you're also, I suppose, with something like PowerPoint, for instance, you're engaging visuals, you're engaging imagery and stuff like that, which perhaps uses different learning centers to just writing stuff down on a page.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, even this year with the online learning, a lot of my students this year presented, I'd say 99% of their work through PowerPoint. And some of the PowerPoints that I received back blew my mind, because the creativity involved in it, I was looking at them going, how do they do this? This is amazing. And, as a teacher, I was being taught, I was going back to the students to say, show me how you did that,
Oh, isn't that wonderful? Isn't that a great place to be? I love it when that
Absolutely.
happens.
It
Yeah.
was brilliant. And I mean, I was looking forward to, so instead of getting these, 2,500 word scripts that you're like, oh my God, I just spent the whole of my Easter correcting it. You're looking forward to receiving this work and seeing how creative your students are. And actually, sometimes your students will get back in contact with you and say, actually, would you mind if I add a little bit more because I missed out on this? So offering them, a creative outlet,
Yeah.
I think is really important. So stop focusing on, that narrow-minded 2,500 word written essay. I think there's more to life than that.
So it seems from what you're saying, and I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, are the students themselves feeling more engaged with the material and what they're being asked to do as a result of being given choice?
I think so. I think giving them the freedom to choose definitely, I suppose they feel like they're authors of their own work, like another example that I have is this year, because I teach on the dental program, I teach on the level 6 dental program. Reflective practice is very important for our students, and it is in all science subjects. And they had to write a diary entry every single day. And we found that this is really, really taxing. So what we've got them to do is they now have the option of recording their diary entry, either visually or verbally. So you know how great they are, like students are on WhatsApp and sound notes. So we kind of encourage them, pick up your phone, record it into your phone, and then upload it. And that's worked really, really well. So, and again, you're getting more of the creative side, and I suppose they are the authors of their own story there, I think, and there's not this focus on just sitting down at the end of the day and typing out, a diary that everybody doesn't like doing, or
So
very few.
that sounds a bit kind of like maverick, doesn't it? So you're asking people to use their phones?
Yes. Well, I mean, I feel like, at this stage in our lives, why are we fighting against technology? Why not go with technology? So, and I mean, I've incorporated that a lot this year. Obviously, we've had to be online, but the last couple of years, sitting in a lecture hall and you're watching the student and they're, scanning through Facebook or Instagram, or so why not use this technology that's in their hand? So, use it to their advantage. So encourage them to take out their phone. We're not the oracles anymore. We don't know everything. I think we're like, Google has definitely outdone us from that part of it. So encourage them to, participate in the class using technology as much as they can. So, if the technology is there to record sound notes, record it. Why not? If you can take a video, I'm often asking my students for evidence. So if they can take a video of a tray that they've set up in the dental surgery, why not? Why can't they upload that as evidence? What's to say they can't do it?
Yeah.
So I think rather than fight against technology, because I think at this stage of our career, if we're still fighting against technology, it's a losing battle at this stage. So I think encourage rather than discourage, really.
So going back to something you said a minute or two ago, then, so are you not a fan of kind of sage on stage, of you being the fount of all knowledge?
I think that's the worst thing in the world. I suppose the thing, I am the eternal student. I was kind of laughing to myself because although I returned to education in my 30s, I have been doing courses ever since 2011. Every year I've been doing courses. So for me, I think as a teacher, I have a lot of empathy for students. So I don't feel like I know everything about a subject. And one of the first things I always say to my students is, listen, I might know something about this, but I'd really love you to come in and tell me something that you know. So, because I'm dealing with adults on a daily basis, you don't know their background. You don't know, what their experience has been. And they might know 100 times more than you do on a specific subject.
Yes.
So why not kind of bring that forward into your class? Why not encourage that dialogue with them? And instead of me saying to them, I know everything and you know nothing, so you need to sit there and listen to me, it's like, come into the class, show me the new technology, or let me show you something, go off and learn it and come back to me and show me more, so I don't have to be the expert in everything. And I think that's been a revelation for me as a teacher, that I don't have to be the expert at everything. The students, that they can be just as expert as I can be,
Does that not, I can imagine, and I mean, certainly for me, that might be quite scary for some teachers or some educators, that they're in a situation where perhaps their students know more than they do about certain subjects, and if so, does that invalidate me as a teacher? Does it make me less important or less viable, if you like, in the role that I see myself in?
Yeah, well, listen, I'm sure there's plenty of teachers that will feel like that, but I think the good teachers will never feel like that. I mean, we all love to see somebody in the class, maybe a mature student that knows a lot about something.
Yeah.
I mean, I know personally I do. Like for example, this year, even in my class, we basically, what we do is, in the dental nursing, we train students that have never stepped foot into a dental surgery. They've no experience, so they're going to get work experience 2 days a week. So they're called the PLC students. But then we have skills to advanced students, and some of these women and girls have been working as dental nurses for 10, 20 years. So who am I to say that I have like all the answers? And I love them coming in and saying to me, oh, we use such and such a material, or we find this is great, and if I kind of got offended every time I was educated by a student, I think I'd be in the wrong job, to be honest.
Yeah.
As I said, I think really, for me, I love being a student, and I love learning off my students too.
Is this phrase that I've come across, kind of reading the literature and being on a few of these courses myself, this co-created learning? Is this what you're talking about? Is kind of like it being a journey together rather than a journey where you're telling people to go that way and that's the only way to go?
I think we're all on a journey, aren't we? Like, I think we all, I think education is a journey, and I think if we're lucky enough to be on a journey with our students, we have, I feel like I have the greatest job in the world sometimes, and I think that if I can be in a class and go on a journey with our students and co-create with our students, I think that's fantastic, and every day I go into my job and, I am taught new things. As I said, when you get a PowerPoint presentation that you think, oh my God, I didn't know you could do that. Like, that's unbelievable. That makes me curious, and that makes me want to go and learn more. It doesn't stop me in my tracks and say, oh, I don't know that, so, and they shouldn't know that. It makes me more curious, and I think that nobody should stop learning. I think everybody should. And I mean, I got this opportunity to go back to education, and I'm so grateful for it. And I suppose for me, it's to pass that opportunity on to other people. And like, education for me is more than about learning about a specific subject. Education is multi-layered. It's about self-esteem, it's about confidence, it's about giving somebody a chance at a new life. And sometimes people take the chances, and sometimes the time isn't right for people, that they'll start a course and then they think, actually, this is not for me, and they'll leave. Well, hopefully they'll come back to it. I think personally for me, education has totally changed my life. Totally. Like, I suppose when I went back to education, I had just gone through like a marriage separation. I had 2 young kids, and I kind of thought, what am I going to do in my life? How am I going to get through this? And I wanted to, I suppose, to make something positive out of something negative, and maybe to inspire. I think maybe for me it was to go back and inspire my kids. But it's just I don't think I've inspired them, by the way, at all. But I think for me, it's been such a mind-blowing experience. You know, when I look at Jennifer from 2011 to Jennifer now, I don't recognize that person. You know, it's and I will say that's all down to education.
That's amazing. And I mean, whether you've inspired the kids or not, you've certainly inspired me. And seeing what you were doing when we were on our course together with the Innovation Academy and stuff. I mean, that's why we kind of got together and have done some work together and stuff as well. So, but I mean, are all your students like super motivated and want to be there and stuff, or do you have to work at this? Because I mean, I guess there's teachers who are listening to this and thinking, the kids in my class don't want to be there, and they don't want to come on Zoom, and nobody will turn cameras on, and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose I worked very hard. I worked very hard at the start of the year to, I suppose, bond the students together a lot. And at the start of the year, even with COVID, we could bring the students in for one day a week. And I worked very hard for them to kind of bond as a classroom. And at the beginning of any year, all students, I would say, well, the majority of students are quite motivated. This is something new. They want to change their lives. It's a new challenge for them. And maybe by October or maybe November, you can see people are being demotivated.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then you can see whose mommy has sent them to do a course, or who kind of picked a course not really knowing what it was about. So, of course, I mean, look, we all have motivation, moments of motivation and moments of demotivation, but I think online, what I found particularly really important this year, and I mean, we did a lot of training, actually, myself and yourself, but the importance of getting the students at the beginning of the year to turn on their cameras and be present in the moment. And I think that's the feedback that have come back from my colleagues, is that a lot of people are teaching to blank screens and they find it very difficult. Whereas my students all leave on their cameras. But I suppose what I did was I kind of created moments where they wanted to come on. So you would give them little challenges to do before they came to class. Or sometimes what I would do is I would open up the Zoom meeting half an hour early and encourage them to come on with a cup of tea or a cup of coffee. So If they wanted to have a chat beforehand, they'd come on. So it was more of a social thing, like it is, I will have to say it's much harder to motivate people online. I will totally agree with you, but it's not impossible to motivate people online. There is a lot of pastoral care involved, I found this year. There's a lot of kind of checking in on people, making sure they're okay. And whether that's sending an email to say, I'm a little bit concerned I haven't seen you in class, or maybe you've been to class but the camera wasn't turned on, and so it could be just that little follow-up, or picking up the phone and ringing students, which I've done. I've spent the year kind of doing, because you don't know people's situation, and particularly this year it's been difficult for young mammies who've been at home with their children, or maybe somebody was caring for someone at home, or a lot of the kids had part-time jobs that they were trying to keep up with. So trying to keep people motivated is harder, but as I said, I think it's more pastoral care. That's where that comes into.
Yeah, and I would agree. I mean, I think as a teacher and an educator myself, if you like, I've always believed that pastoral care is really important in that mix. I know some teachers just want to come in, teach their subject, and kind of go home, and not necessarily engage with the students from that perspective. But I think, and certainly in the year that's in it, we're recording this at the end of March 2021, when hopefully the COVID is starting to recede and the vaccines are kicking in. But we're all still working from home. We're all still on Zoom. There's virtually no connection with our students physically at the moment for most teachers and educators. And it's been a difficult year. It definitely has been a learning, hasn't it?
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's maybe something that the students really miss. It's like it's the social aspect, and
Yeah.
sometimes that's kind of taken for granted. I mean, when you look at the universities and the colleges and these fabulous big campuses
Mm.
and lots of amazing facilities, and people can't access that, and there's a reason that I suppose universities have these fabulous campuses, because it is about bringing students together, and it is the social aspect is so important. And I mean, like, when I went to university, I made some great friends there, and I'm still in contact with these friends. We have a Facebook page from our HSIP that we still keep in contact with. So that was really important. I think we can't underestimate the importance of the students leaving the class and going for a coffee and having a conversation going, did you know what your mom was talking about? Joe didn't make any sense in that class. And for someone to say, well, actually, I think this is what he's trying to say. So, sometimes the process, and the thinking doesn't always happen in the class.
No.
Sometimes the thinking can happen outside the class,
So,
and I think that's really important. And I think that's where, look, Zoom can never, Zoom has been a great thing to use this year, but it can never kind of take over that. But I think it's really important to use breakout rooms and give the students the opportunity to go in and talk in breakout rooms and vent if they need to.
you mentioned social media there, Facebook and stuff like that. Have you used any other channels apart from Zoom, for instance, as part of your teaching and learning?
For this year, so I've used Jamboards a lot this year, like collaborative kind of boards. I have to be honest with you, I'm not great on social media as such. I mean, I do like technology, well, for example, Twitter and stuff like that. I'm not great, and I don't really like to use Twitter as a teaching tool. I think at the start of my career, I thought, oh, this would be great to use Facebook and Twitter, but I find there's a lot of negativity, with social media. But I do like to use collaborative tools. I'm actually doing a course at the moment in NCI on learning and technology. So that's really interesting as well. But yeah, I mean, I've used a lot of technology this year to try and bring the students together. Like, again, as I said, inside the class, but also outside the class as well. So to create this collaborative space for them.
So maybe tell us one story about how you've used some kind of technology to help the students kind of get something, or
Yeah, so like I suppose at the start of the year I started to use Jamboards, and for anyone that has used Jamboards or who hasn't used Jamboards, it's in the Google Suites, and I'm a big fan of Jamboard.
And it's a free tool, Jamboard, is it?
It's a free tool, yeah. It's fantastic, and it's a collaborative board. And I suppose I started at the start of the year using Jamboards, introducing them, and showed the students the benefits of the Jamboards. And then actually, the college got a license for Padlet. So I moved to Padlet as well. So that's exactly more or less the same. I know some people either love Padlet or hate it, but because we had the license for it, I could do everything on it. So what I've used Padlet for this year, and the students loved it actually, was at the end of modules, I embedded it onto the page, onto Moodle. So we use a Moodle site, and I kind of used it as an evaluation board, and it was a very public evaluation board. The students could choose to be anonymous or not. I asked them very specific questions about the course, because again, I wanted to see what I could do better going forward, what they liked, what they didn't like, what I could do better, what they felt like they learned, and what they wanted to learn. So I used that, and the students, it took them a couple of days, but once they started to put things up, and from that was a really good learning tool for me also, to get that feedback. And then they started to kind of collaborate on that. And then also what I do is I use it as a glossary board as well, Padlet. So I embedded it into Moodle, and a lot of, I suppose, the theory, the language that they'll hear this year, be quite scientific. So I encourage them to investigate words. The first time they hear a word, go off, investigate it, look it up, and put it on the glossary board so we can refer back to it. So that's a kind of a live glossary board, and then they can use that for a revision tool as well. So that kind of worked really well because they could embed YouTube clips, they could embed lots of different websites. So that worked really well as well. So,
and I suppose you see what terms they're putting up there, so that informs you that was kind of a knowledge gap that they had.
Absolutely, that's it. And sometimes, when you're online and you're asking people at the end of the class, did everybody understand it? There's lots of people in the class that don't understand it, but they're, that maybe they're too embarrassed to say, well, actually, I didn't get that. But by offering this, they can say, they can kind of put up these statements. I didn't understand that, or, this word I don't understand, so I'm going to go off and investigate it. So that really worked so well this year, so that's kind of just one of the technologies. I tried not to overwhelm the students too much with too much technology this year. I think that's one thing I was very mindful of, because although I find discovering technology very exciting and I can see a million ways of using stuff, if a student goes into my class and I'm showing them 5 new platforms, and then they go into another teacher's class and they have 5 different platforms, very quickly I think they get very tired, very overwhelmed by it. So this discussion we had at the start of the year in our department, in the dental department, was that we all agreed to use the same platforms. So we picked 3 platforms that we wanted to use and use it really well, and that we could see potential to use it throughout the year and we could build on it. So the students, they got to use Moodle, they got to use Jamboards, they got to use Padlets, and the other one that I used a lot this year was like Edpuzzle as well. They love that, and look, YouTube is fantastic as well. But I tried, and I think that would be probably a tip I'd probably give teachers: try not to overwhelm students with technology. Again, it's like we all assume things sometimes. So we assume people have, access to Wi-Fi and they've access to all these, laptops, but often students don't.
Yes, so we've got to be more inclusive and aware of the fact that maybe they only have a phone to come in,
Absolutely.
or they only have a a tablet to come in on, or whatever. Yeah.
Okay.
That's super. Right. Well, we're kind of 40 minutes in, and I mean, it's incredible the ground we've covered. I'm just going to kind of ask you a few more specific questions. And I know you gave me some information before we started today. So one of the questions is, are there any books that we should all read as educators? And I think you put down The Hidden Lives of Learners by Graham Nuttall. So why The Hidden Lives of Learners? Why should we all read that book?
Well, I came across this book, actually, believe it or not, when I was in college, when I was in my HDip, and I was reading all sorts of books for education. I was reading Ferrera and everyone else. So, but this book kind of really stayed with me, and I love reading. I read a lot, but the thing about me is I forget I forget things really quickly. Yes. So I'll never remember the author, and I'll never remember the name of the book. But I actually revisited this book, and I never revisit books because I just feel like there's too many books, but this book really stayed with me, actually. And again, if you look up YouTube, there's a really good clip on YouTube as well about this book as well. But I kind of went back to it when I started in Marino. I had it upstairs and I went back. So basically, the whole premise of the book is, I suppose, as a teacher, there's 3 areas in teaching, So as a teacher, you go into a class and you have this information that you have to give to your students. So we're focused on the curriculum. We're focused on our module descriptor. We're focusing on, as you said, being sage on the stage and pouring this information into, that's really our job, But the next part of education then is the social aspect. So how much the students learn from each other. So what goes on, with each other, the social aspects. And then the third part of education is when students actually are interested enough to listen to the information the teacher has given, learning through their peers, but how they become independent learners outside as well. So they're interested enough to say, actually, that was something interesting. So I'm going to kind of leave, I'm going to go off and do a research. And to create that independent researcher is what we all want fundamentally of our students, and again, that I loved reading that book. It was just some a book that kind of stayed with me because, as I said, as a teacher, we think that's our responsibility is to teach. But as a student, there's so much more to it.
And
Um,
you seem to build that into your process in a way that you share ideas with your students, but then you give them the opportunity to go off and build on those ideas and come back to a Jamboard or a Padlet or whatever. So that seems to be taking those three ideas and incorporating them into your teaching.
Yeah, probably. And I think maybe that's why the book kind of sang to me so much, because remember, I read it as I was doing my HDIP, so I was a student, but I could really see the benefits of it. And I thought this is actually really great because, I can go in and sit in a philosophy of education lecture and like, what do I actually know about it, or what do I want to know about it? So, you can come in and lecture me for an hour. Am I interested enough to sit down and have a coffee and talk to my peers about it, and then go over to the library and find a book about it? So how do you ignite that spark in somebody? And then I suppose that flipped me down as a teacher, because I was on the other side and I wanted to create that independent learner, I wanted to kind of give people that, that need, to go off and learn, to kind of expand your mind,
And
um,
isn't that what real innovative educators do? They act almost as a catalyst, don't they? They're a spark, like
absolutely.
fire, I suppose.
And Joe, sometimes it's just about a teacher having a kind word for a student, or
Yeah.
saying to a student, I believe in you. I can see you're struggling, but I know you're going to be great, and I know you're going to overcome this challenge. I know, look, like a lot of people listen to this and go, that's all well and good, but if you have 40 students in a class, that's hard to do. And it is hard to do, but it is sometimes just about having that kind word and not criticizing. We're so quick to criticize, as human beings. I think it's a really nice thing to offer a kind word to someone. And sometimes as a human being, that's all you need, is for someone to say to you, I believe in you. I know you can do this.
Or
Um,
even just I see you.
I
Because
see you.
sometimes in a class of 40, a student can feel invisible, can't they?
Absolutely.
I've
That's it.
found that with Zoom particularly. I mean, Zoom lets you call on people by name.
Yes.
I think that's one thing that I've learned about teaching online this year is I've got everybody's name in their little window at the bottom of the screen and stuff. And so whenever I ask a question, I always say, right, Jen, tell me what you think about whatever. And you've got that connection, which
Yeah.
perhaps in a regular classroom, it's early on in the term and you've not learnt everybody's names and stuff, and you're just kind of pointing at somebody and saying, "What do you think about that?" And it's not the same, is it? It's
No,
not the same.
no. It's look, it is sometimes that a personal touch. It's as you said, as a student, being seen and being heard. And a lot of people come back to education with such bad experiences, whether they're a 17-year-old that has just literally, like I spend the first couple of months when I'm teaching, and people putting up their hand and saying, Miss, can I go to the toilet? I'd be like, okay, first of all, my name's Jennifer. And
Yeah.
second of all, yeah, of course you can go to the toilet. You're an adult. But, and I totally get why in secondary school they have to do that. I mean, it's all about discipline and classroom management. But, as an adult, some people return with this negative voice in their head saying, you were never good enough. You're not good enough. You're still not good enough, and sometimes they just need someone to flip that switch and say, you're totally good enough. I can see your potential. You amaze me every day. I can't wait to see your PowerPoint presentations.
Yeah.
So I think that's really important as well.
Fantastic. So I suppose to round off, the podcast is called Plus One Teaching. So what's your actionable plus one, if you like, that you'd like to give the rest of us as educators and as listeners, if you like? What would you like us to do?
Well, again, I suppose because I'm associated with UDL and because I believe in it so much, I would love people to go off and kind of read up about UDL. As I said, just put it into Google if you've never heard of it. And if you have heard of it or if you've done the course, implement one thing, give one form of choice during the year. It doesn't have to be directly related to an assignment. It can be something that you do in the classroom. Like, look at the framework, see how you can change your teaching, because it really does change your teaching. UDL will absolutely blow your mind. It really is. So, that would be my plus one. If you're feeling weary or you feel like, oh, I really want to make a change, I've been doing the same thing for 10 years, my students are very demotivated. What can I do? Look up UDL, there's great courses that AHEAD and UCD do. They'll be rolling them out again next year. So, look them up and, read the framework. That's the other thing about the framework of UDL is anybody can read it. It's so user friendly. It's in plain English, simple English, that people can have that aha moment and go, oh yeah, actually I really get this.
And it's kind of it's open as well, isn't it? I mean, they've shared it. They want people to pick it up and run with it and use it and stuff. So
yeah, there's so many YouTube clips on it. I've done lots of courses online of UDL. I've done cast courses. So they want people to spread the word, and get into it. I suppose if I have a plus two, Joe, am I allowed to have a plus two?
You're allowed to have a plus two, yeah.
Yeah, I suppose for me as well is never stop learning, never stop being a student. I think there's so much joy in learning and so much joy in feeling like you've achieved something and you've accomplished something and you've learned something new. Even in as an elder teacher, you can still say, actually, that's something new and I didn't know that. So yeah, keep learning and have empathy for your students.
Yeah.
That's the way.
Definitely.
I mean,
definitely echo both of those. Yeah,
absolutely. Look, I'm the biggest procrastinator known to man. I'll do everything to avoid handing an assignment, or I know that something's due tomorrow. Oh, I better sit down and do it. Like, that's exactly what students do. So we're all the same.
Yeah.
So never stop learning.
That's fantastic. Well, look, I think we'll wrap it up there. Thank you so much for giving your time today. I think that's been a great start to the podcast, and I think you've given us some super food for thought. And as always, I've been inspired by listening to you. So thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you for having me on.
Okay, all right, and we'll draw a close there. Thank you so much.
Great, thanks.